I'm Mary Dixon.
And I'm Patrick Smith. We want to hear from you about federal immigration enforcement. What are you seeing? What do you think we should do about it? We also want to talk to you about the election and the ongoing government shutdown, the longest shutdown in history. 866-915-9239 is the number. And I think we have Sarah from Logan Square on the line. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hey, so what's going on?
Well, what I wanted to, I was on for a while, and the young man who took my call thought it was interesting. So my issue I wanted to raise is I am extraordinarily upset and very, 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 very sick to the soul about this entire operation, horrible operations going on with the shutdown, but not just the shutdown, the implications of it with the immigration, for me.
Say more. You say this operation. What do you mean by that?
Pardon?
What do you mean by this operation? Go ahead.
Do you mean the immigration enforcements, the cutoff of
enforcement?
Okay,
the immigration enforcement, which I think is racist.
Okay.
I think that it racist, and I mean from racist, spiritually racist, denying people the right to worship, even where they are, being violated. But my point is, all of this. This is the view I've been talking with people, my friends and family. It all is to be laid at the foot of Donald Trump. He needs to be impeached.
Okay. Thank you for that thought, Sarah, and thanks for hanging on to talk to us.
And for deeming our executive producer a young man. I think, Dan is young, but I think
he is going to be dining out on that for quite some time. Thanks so much. And of course, worth noting that President Trump impeached twice during his first administration and reelected.
And President Trump also saying that the immigration enforcement is not going far enough so far.
OK is in Washington Park. Hey, OK, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are y'all doing?
We're doing okay. Okay. And I understand you are concerned about the immigration enforcement as well.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it, with my naked eyes, any sort of, thing. But, I go on, Reddit on Our Illinois, and there's, just constant, camera footage of, people getting stopped by ICE and ICE kind of just opening up their door and just dragging people out and dragging people on the street and I'm just so worried because when I see those I'm seeing what neighborhood it is and I'm I've been to those neighborhoods, I know where that is, and it's when's it gonna happen? Would it ever happen to me? Would I ever because I work out everywhere in Chicago, I have a work truck, what if someone pulled me over and what am I going to do?
Right. Do you have a plan? Have you looked up what you would want to try to do in that situation?
I have no, I just God willing, just, pray for the best. I have no plan for no, there's not a know your rights type of thing. I just to stay in my car, turn your camera, make sure it's horizontal and just record everything that you can so that you can hold people accountable in a court of law. That's all I have. And it just right now, it feels like this is our version of the Troubles, It just we talk about civil war, but it's this feels what it is. It's not troops coming into it's just it's bad guys kidnapping people on the streets in broad daylight and little resistances, people having ad hoc little protests and everything. I mean, sometimes I'm glad that there's a lot of people who are adamant and are against this, but there are a whole bunch of people that this is exactly what they wanted. This is what they voted for. And when people say I'm glad that Trump's really addressing the border, this is the thing that they're talking about, people being kidnapped on the streets. So there's still a lot of people who are okay with this, and that is not okay.
Let me ask you real quick. You talked about watching these videos. I mean, how do you balance the desire to stay informed versus the need to protect your own mental health and not inundate yourself with these negative images?
I meditate. It's not. I'm on a different plane of I can just consume information without it really affecting me. I'm okay. There will be certain times where at the end of the day I'm I'll retreat to. I'll go take a nap or go to sleep and it will be okay. And like I'm first thing in the morning, I'm like, oh, it's fine. But like I'm not. I like to stay informed. I think being informed like helps me like keep my mind from wondering what's going on. And like at the end of the day, it's like you try to like understand that like everything's kind of a narrative, and like don't get caught up in the narrative. It's just like
Okay.
There's some things that are true. Yeah, you don't want to like get caught up in everything. So I try my best.
All right. Well, keep meditating. Thank you for checking in with us. Okay, we appreciate it. Should we? Should we talk to Holly in South Shore? Holly in South Shore, you had a question, I think.
Yeah, So something I've been thinking about a little bit, particularly with respect to the Broadview place where there's so many accusations of abuse and nobody can get in, elected representatives can't get in, lawyers can't get in, priests can't get in, that I wonder if there isn't some way to request a visitation by the International Committee of the Red Cross. I think some people are being detained under the Foreign Enemy Aliens Act, which means that they're prisoners of war, right?
I don't know if a war has been technically declared, but that is a really interesting question. I think if we get someone in who actually knows what they're talking about, not me, Holly, that is a really good question.
It's a great question, Holly. I will say, lawmakers, senators have tried to get in. They are by law supposed to be allowed in, and they haven't been. So I appreciate the question, but I'm also not sure that the Red Cross would make a difference compared to senators or lawyers who are also supposed to be able to have access to clients.
Right. But thank you for calling in with that question. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We are taking your calls, 866-915-9239. Why don't we talk to Rick in Ravenswood, reacting to the news of last night's elections? Is your glass half empty or glass full?
I am the silver linings call.
Okay.
My glass is very half full. Yeah, and you just asked somebody about mental health, and I've got some comments on that. First, of course, the elections last night were wonderful, and it was a good statement. What happened in California was grand and wonderful. And I was watching the late night shows the other night. I was watching some of the clips for, on YouTube of Jon Stewart, for example, and I watched Saturday Night Live. And I want to remind people that we still live in a country where satirization of our leaders is acceptable. We still live in a country where we can have no king's marches. And I think what the power for us right now is to keep our voices active, and I think to be reasonable and have questions. So whenever somebody approaches me and says, whatever their views are, I'm saying, well, my question for them is it really okay if it's really law enforcement, then why are they wearing masks? I think we need to teach people to ask the right questions of these ridiculous things that are going on. But mostly I call because I wanted people to have a silver linings thought that, you don't have to always be so depressed over all this, that we still have a voice. We're still satirizing the press. We are having free elections. And that's how I feel. So I'm pretty upbeat and pretty positive. And that was my silver linings thought for the day.
Silver Linings Playbook from Rick in Ravenswood. We really appreciate that. Why don't we talk to Annika in Evanston? Annika, what are you seeing out there?
Hi, I'm going to start crying again. Okay, so
crying is okay.
Yesterday was my day off. I, had my chores to do. Went to go pay the mortgage on Tui in front of the Walmart, and did my job. Walked out, and I just walked out into like a paramilitary event with men with guns in army uniforms, stopping this man with handcuffs and people around. But I want to say two things. One thing is, I live in the middle of the United States. I pay taxes. I obey the laws, and I expect the government to obey the laws by not harassing me, by bringing the military into my little free hamlet where people are law-abiding and we're citizens of this country. The paramilitary does not belong in the parking lot of Walmart. Second of all, I went afterwards to do some shopping that I had to do, and I was so like this. I was like this. I was talking to myself, and I was just grabbing things, and people came up to me that were working there. One woman's mother was in that parking lot blowing whistles to protect people, and I lived 2 blocks away from what happened in Evanston, on Oakton and Asbury, but I was at work at the time. And this does not belong in our country. To people that think it's okay, it isn't okay. We are a peaceful country. We have civic laws in place. And yes, we're human. There's always going to be something that goes wrong. But for the most part, we're good people. We always have been. And this does not belong in the United States. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, thank you, Annika. And I know that was really emotional and a little traumatic.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that with us. And I hope you're able to, able to handle it and process it. And in fact, why don't we take one more call from Jessica? Let's talk to Jessica in Avondale. Jessica, I understand you're a therapist. Is that right?
Hi, yes, I'm a psychologist, and I'm also Latina, and I see a very large bilingual Latino community. And while I'm doing teletherapy now, I've started to ask my clients where they are, because sometimes people take therapy calls, as you know, in their offices or their private home, or sometimes in a car, because they might, be on the go in between one thing or another. And, hearing about abductions this morning, there was an abduction near my home of a daycare worker being pulled out of a daycare in front of all the children. Yeah. I have to now ask where people are, because I don't know if that person walking by their car is going to slam into them or break their window or pull them out physically. People that have or don't have documentation, it does not matter.
Right. That overarching right now. The overarching stress and anxiety from it, just from the randomness of it for people, has got to be tough.
I mean, you're talking about the physical danger. What is it doing to people's, their mental health right now?
I think everyone's in an unbelievable state of anxiety. I think people are afraid to leave their homes. I've been told people are afraid to leave their homes, even though they have any kind of documentation, whether it be visas or green cards or are U.S. citizens. I think people are just fearful that they're going to be caught also alone. And there's something to be said about the solidarity of people having whistles or honking their horns. That is still a First Right Amendment, that we can say and do those things when we watch somebody being abducted. We need more of that. Jessica, we need more of that energy, because people feel alone.
Jessica, thank you so much for calling. And Mary, Jessica was talking about that daycare teacher that you were talking about who was pulled out of her classroom today. I mean, and I don't want to make other people's trauma and fear mine, but my wife was just messaging me that story, like, what if they came to our daughter's daycare,
Right. And that was, across the street from Lane Tech High School. You're listening to Say More on 91.5 WBEZ. We thank you for sharing what's going on in your neighborhood. Coming up next, Tortoise is releasing its first new album in 9 years. We're going to talk to Dan Bitney and Doug McCombs from Tortoise. You can call in with a question or comment for them at 866-915-9239. But first, let's take a little break for some more news with Alex Degman.
Mary, thanks. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear giving a news conference right now on the UPS plane crash that happened in Louisville last night. The death toll there up to 9. The governor is fairly certain that's going to rise. The state's asking people immediately around the crash area to avoid drinking the water for now. We'll have details on this developing story throughout the day here on WBEZ.
I'm Scott Tong. Tom Colicchio, chef, restaurateur, and Top Chef judge, wrote the book Think Like a Chef 25 years ago. He lays out his cooking philosophy, which is all about fundamentals.
There's some basic building blocks, and I think that too many people focus on the recipe as a means to an end as opposed to the techniques.
Next time, Here and Now.
Here and Now, this morning at 11 o'clock on WBEZ.
Support for WBEZ comes from Progressive and Progressive Insurance and from Symphony Center. Joshua Redman returns with his quartet on November 7th alongside vocalist Gabrielle Cavassa. More at cso.org/jazz.
When Washington pulled our federal funding, you didn't back down. More than 20,000 people joined our mission to keep fact-based local reporting strong. WBEZ was defunded, but never defeated. Thank you.
The Money Desk on WBEZ is supported by the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, a destination for trailblazers who want to change the world by leading with insight. Learn more at chicagobooth.edu/business.
58 degrees and partly cloudy. This is WBEZ.
This is Say More on 91.5 WBEZ. It's 10:46 on, what is it? Is it
It's
Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
Oh, good. I'm Mary Dixon.
And I'm Patrick Smith. And here with us, we have Dan Bittney and Doug McCombs from the band Tortoise. How you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really good. How's it going?
I'm doing great. We're so excited to have you in studio.
So you have just released or are releasing a new album called Touch. It comes 9 years after The Catastrophist came out. Very popular, well-received album. What's been happening for the last 9 years, guys?
COVID.
You may have heard of there was a global pandemic. No,
that doesn't ring a bell. No.
I mean, we did, after The Catastrophist came out, we were touring a lot, and we basically were, getting ready to maybe think about recording a new album when the pandemic hit. And so we put that aside for a while. And then once vaccinations happened, we kind of started back up again. Like we started playing some shows and started thinking about making a new recording. That's the bulk of it. And then once we started, I don't know if people are aware of this, but it takes us a long time to make an album.
Insert pun.
Yeah.
Also, I understand that members of the band have moved to different cities. So you guys are still in Chicago, but you also have members in LA and Portland. So did that affect your work together? How did that affect your workflow, I guess I'd say?
Yeah, I think it does. It's more common now for us to, email will be like 30 emails about when we can have a meeting for discussing the project.
Yeah.
It's very different from like making a couple calls and,
hey, let's go meet at our spot.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those moves had happened in the teens already, like before the pandemic even, so we were getting used to it at that point, like sort of working remotely and trying to be in touch with each other. I had never heard of a Zoom, though, until the pandemic. So,
Yeah. So did you do any recording with Zoom or in some way over that, or were you able to get together in person for this?
Yeah. We actually, the actual recording process for this record was not extremely different from any of our other previous recordings. We did a little preparation beforehand, like sent each other some demos and things like that back and forth.
Okay.
But mostly when we make a record, we just kind of get face to face and start presenting ideas to each other and then start working on them. It all happens in the recording studio, more or less.
Yeah. How do you guys decide? I mean, everybody's got different other projects besides Tortoise. How do you all decide I want to bring this to Tortoise? Or is it just like when we're together, we improvise and we find the song together? How do you decide what project is for what?
I mean, we do some improvisation, and we actually started this record with just documenting some of that, which previously wouldn't have really been a thing that we had tried too often.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what I do is if I don't know what to do with a song or an idea, that's the one I present to Tortoise.
I like that.
Yeah, because Tortoise is more collaborative than almost anything else I do, and so like that's the strength of the band is kind of like having these ideas that you don't exactly know what to do with, and that other guys in the group can run with it.
Local music fans probably know Doug McCombs not only from Tortoise, but also from the band Brokeback, also from 11th Dream Day, also The Sea and Cake. Dan, what other projects do you work with?
I have a project with my wife. It's called Spectralina. It's an audio-visual duo, but we are mostly an improvised unit. So, which, we could talk about that for a minute. Sometimes I see it as a cop-out as far as being a composer. I'm like, well, I don't got time to remember what I'm doing, But yeah, Spectralina is interesting. We got an award, the D-Case Award, to show on the Merchandise Mart during COVID, which was really nice.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was a piece that featured Jamie Branch on trumpet, Jeff Parker on guitar, John Herndon. And that was really fun because we would go down there and it seemed like the city was insane at that point. You would just see cars parked in the middle of an intersection with people twerking on it. I'd be like, we're in a new world now. And another interesting thing was people would show up and watch these giant projected videos and then applaud afterwards as if it was a real performance.
We needed that experience.
Yeah.
We needed that connection. The pandemic was really hard especially for people who like going out to see shows. The new album, Doug and Dan, Pitchfork writes gives a warm review to Touch, and also for folks who are not familiar with Tortoise, says at its best, Tortoise was music nerd tantra, body music for head people.
What do you think? Does that sound right? I'm sure you guys, when you get together, you're like, all right, everybody, let's make some body music for head people. Now's the time. Go.
I love it.
I mean, that's been a kind of a constant thing throughout our career, is like, we're not making dance music specifically, but so many of us in the group are interested in that type of music that it comes out through it. And but really what I believe we're making is just something that's interesting to listen to. So like it's a combination of those things. It's like you know, there's like, and there aren't any really real boundaries in Tortoise. We sort of like embrace anything that appeals to us. So like we do, we combine a lot of those different types of things.
So Dan, you were kind of pumping your fist when Mary was saying you guys are the two who remained in Chicago. How would you describe the Chicago scene right now, especially, you know, if your bandmates are telling you what LA and Portland is like? What's the Chicago scene right now for the kind of music you guys make?
I mean, for Tortoise, I think it's great. I deal more in like the improv and the free jazz world. So, I mean, that's incredible. You know, having Constellation, having the Hungry Brain, having Elastic Arts. There's so many great places to see creative music. I mean, that's just a few. Sorry if I'm leaving some out.
Well, I was saying to Mary, on Saturday, I was at the show at the Empty Bottle with Joe McPhee. And,
oh my God. Yeah.
Damon Locks. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, it's a you know, I see it, and you know, obviously I'm biased, but it definitely seems like one of the more creative cities, or one of the more. I'm fumbling here.
No, that's okay.
It's okay. Anytime you're saying Chicago is one of the best or the best, we're on board. Our listeners are on board.
We are here for it. Doug?
I mean, I feel like there are communities in most big cities that are similar to ours, but Chicago has never not had interesting music happening. Like, it's been like that for decades and decades and decades. And it's like the improvised scene here, incredible. And like Mike Reed is doing an incredible thing with his new festival, bringing the international flavor here for like so many great groups from across the world are going to be coming for this new festival.
Mike Reed, one of the organizers of the Pitchfork Festival, which is now no longer, but he started this new sort of free jazz, you know, alternate jazz
Sound
festival.
and Gravity, is that
Sound and Gravity.
Yeah.
So and also when you released Oganesson, the first single from Touch, there was also the Oganesson's remixes. I see Micaiah McCraven is on there doing his version of it. So you've got that whole scene happening.
Saul Williams too.
Saul Williams.
Oh my God, that's such a powerful piece.
Heba Kadri. Well, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she's like a real shining light in the music world these days. She's like an incredible, well, she started she still is mainly a mastering engineer, but she's collaborated with Bjork, all these different people, and she's like really incredible.
Yeah. In case we're getting a little too heady here for folks, I also wanted to ask, what percentage of your fans would you say come to you from Grand Theft Auto?
I hope it's a lot.
Yeah, because there's a tortoise. I have to admit, I'm not a gamer. I don't know about you, Mary, but
I am not a gamer.
But there's a tortoise radio station in one of the GTA games. Is that right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never actually explored what that actually is.
Do you have people coming up to you like, "Oh man, I steal a car that I put on your music"? No. So you all are playing a special WBEZ event with the Chicago Philharmonic at the Auditorium next Tuesday. That's your record release. Why play an album release show with the Chicago Philharmonic?
I mean, the main answer to that question is because the idea was presented to us and we couldn't pass it up. You know, like that's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Is it? Why?
There's a lot of pressure.
Why?
Because we have to do good. We have to make it good, you know? And we know that they're going to play well, and we have to make sure that we play the music to the best of our ability so that it turns out.
Are both Tortoise and the Chicago Philharmonic talking about the playing with improvising, and will they be improvising like you improvise, or are they going to be the rock against which you crash your music?
I mean, we will barely be doing any improvising at all. It'll be like
there's some.
I mean, there's some that like what amounts to like guitar solos and things like that.
Yeah.
Improvising.
Yeah, but we're playing dot eyes.
We're playing a couple tunes that'll be a little looser without the Philharmonic.
Okay.
But mostly we have to play spot on versions of the tunes so that it matches up with the arrangements that have been written for them. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're recording and filming the concert.
Okay.
Oh,
So
hey.
that is a lot of pressure. That is a lot of pressure.
Making a little news.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan Bittney, Doug McCombs from Tortoise. You can find them online at trts.com. If you want info on the album release show at the auditorium, wbez.org/events. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Mary.
Thank you very much.
And now,
Support
ladies
WBZ.
Yeah.
Hey.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remove your ball caps for our national anthem.
That's Oganesson by Tortoise, and that's it for Say More. Tomorrow on the show, how private equity is messing with some of our local companies. That's tomorrow. Private equity is messing with some of our local companies. That's tomorrow at 10. I'm Mary Dixon.
I'm Patrick Smith. Here and Now is up next.
Thanks for listening to WBEZ. Good morning. I'm Alex Degman. Well, despite national narratives to the contrary, data points from the city of Chicago show that violent crime here continues to decline. And keepsakes once belonging to Coco Taylor ended up for sale on the South Side last week for just a few bucks. WBEZ News is next. Stay with us. Support for WBEZ comes from Steppenwolf Theater, continuing its 50th anniversary season with Amadeus, winner of 5 Tony Awards and 8 Academy Awards. Amadeus performances begin this week. Tickets at steppenwolf.org.
WBEZ is supported by Moderna. mNEXSpike, COVID-19 vaccine mRNA by Moderna, is now available. Pharmacists can help with any questions about mNEXSpike.
Support comes from the Salvation Army, providing support to neighbors in the community in need of groceries, housing, and other basic necessities this holiday season. More info on donations and services provided at salarmychicago.org. You're listening to WBEZ HD Chicago 91.5 FM, WBEQ Morris 90.7 FM, and WBEK Kankakee 91.1 FM, and anytime on your smart speaker.
Funding for Here and Now comes from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software, accelerating the pace of engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com.
From NPR and WBUR Boston, I'm Peter O'Dowd.
And I'm Scott Tong. This is Here and Now. Coming up, a historic night as New Yorkers elected Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani to be the city's new mayor.
New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change.
We'll get reaction from the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. Does that election chart a path forward for the party?
That and Tom Colicchio, chef, restaurateur, and Top Chef judge, wrote the book Think Like a Chef 25 years ago. He lays out his cooking philosophy, which is all about fundamentals.
There's some basic building blocks, and I think that too many people focus on the recipe as a means to an end as opposed to the techniques.
Coming up here and now.
First, the news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of New York City. NPR's Brian Mann says Mamdani defeated former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican Curtis Sliwa.
A year ago, Mamdani, who will be New York's first Muslim mayor, was relatively unknown, and Cuomo was a political titan. But last night, it was Mamdani declaring victory.
The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty.
Cuomo was hobbled in this race by sexual harassment scandals that drove him from office in 2021. In his concession, Cuomo voiced anger at Mamdani's embrace of socialism.
We support an economy of jobs, of opportunity, of entrepreneurship.
But many of Mamdani's supporters say his victory was a sign voters want a new, more hopeful politics. Brian Mann, NPR News, New York.
Cuomo was endorsed by President Trump, who threatened to withhold some federal funding to New York City if Mamdani won. First responders are searching for more possible victims at the site of yesterday's UPS cargo plane crash at Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport. Governor Andy Beshear says at least 9 people have died.
But I'm now fairly confident that that number will grow by at least 1. We hope it doesn't grow by too many more. I believe by this afternoon we'll have a pretty good grasp of both the number of fatalities and, if there are any, the number of missing persons that we're still looking for.
Authorities say at least 11 people were injured. Video showed flames on the plane's left wing and a trail of smoke. The aircraft crashed as it was departing for Honolulu. Today, the Supreme Court hears arguments in a case testing whether President Trump may, acting on his own, impose tariffs under a federal law that does not specify that it covers tariffs or duties on imported goods. NPR's Nina Totenberg reports the president is relying on what he calls his emergency powers.
The Supreme Court's conservative supermajority has in the past been receptive to Trump's claims of presidential authority, but most of those Trump victories came in cases involving the so-called emergency docket, allowing Trump policies to take effect on a temporary basis while the litigation played out in the lower courts. The tariff cases are the real thing, with the court having ordered full briefing and expedited arguments. On its face, Trump's opponents have a strong case, but the court is often reluctant to second-guess presidential determinations on questions of national security. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. The Dow up 193 points. This is NPR News.
60 degrees, partly cloudy at 11:04. Good morning. I'm Alex Degman with WBEZ News. Violent crime in Chicago continued to trend downward in October. WBEZ's Anna Savchenko has more.
City data show homicides and shootings last month were down by almost 40% compared to October of last year. Data show even bigger drops in carjackings and robberies overall. Violent crime in Chicago has been trending down since 2023, and that includes murders, which have been sloping down since 2021. But just this weekend, President Trump cited Chicago's crime stats in a CBS interview as the reason he wants to send National Guard troops to the city. Data show the only type of violent crime that didn't drop in October, compared to the same month last year, is sexual assaults. They were up 11%. Anna Savchenko, WBEZ News.
United States Steel yesterday detailed an $11 billion growth plan with new owner Nippon Steel. U.S. Steel says it's identified more than 200 initiatives to drive operational efficiencies across all business segments, helped by nearly 50 professionals from Nippon Steel. U.S. Steel has more than 20 plants around the country, including 3 in Northwest Indiana and 1 in downstate Granite City near St. Louis. The city of Gary says it employs about 4,000 workers. U.S. Steel does. Irreplaceable keepsakes that once belonged to Queen of the Blues Coco Taylor ended up for sale for just a few bucks on the city's south side last week. Handwritten song lyrics, signed photographs, and dresses the singer wore on stage were discovered at a flea market by a local artist. The items originated from a storage locker in Orland Park that was being liquidated. Taylor's daughter says she lost the storage unit when she missed payments in the midst of a health crisis. She's asking people who bought the items and want to return them to contact her through the Blues Heaven Foundation. Sports, Bulls beat the Philadelphia 76ers at the United Center last night, 113-110. Three-point shot made with 3 seconds to go sealed it for the Bulls. They play the Bucks on Friday in Milwaukee at a 7 o'clock tip time. Blackhawks play the Canucks on the road tonight. Puck drops at 9. Sunny, breezy with a high around 60 today. Clear tonight with a low around 36. I'm Alex Degman. This is WBEZ.
Support for NPR comes from BetterHelp, committed to making mental well-being a priority and offering support in taking on everything life demands, with therapists available to communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Peter O'Dowd in Phoenix.
And I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C. This is Here and Now. Zohran Mamdani. By now you've heard the name. Last night he was elected mayor of New York City in the city's largest turnout in 5 decades. When he takes office in January, he will have a lot of firsts. New York's first Muslim mayor, first of South Asian heritage, first born in Africa. Oh, and he's 34, which will make him the city's youngest mayor in more than a century. At his victory speech in Brooklyn, Mamdani noted young and working-class New Yorkers who picked him.
New York! Tonight you have delivered a mandate for change, a mandate for a new kind of politics, a mandate for a city we can afford, and a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that.
New York One political journalist Ayanna Harry has been following the campaign. Ayanna, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Mamdani beat former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican Curtis Sliwa. We just heard the mayor-elect talk about a city we can afford after campaigning largely on pocketbook issues. Tell me about some of his economic promises.
Affordability is such a deep and important issue for so many New Yorkers. And what we're seeing more and more is that affordability isn't just an issue that impacts lower income New Yorkers. It's really beginning to impact folks throughout a variety of different income levels. And so Zohran Mamdani was able to speak to that in detail on the campaign trail. And he did so with easy, simple slogans that really resonated with New Yorkers. So one of his promises is fast and free buses. And so it might not seem like a lot for some people, but right after Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic primary in June, I spent a lot of time in Jackson Heights, Queens, and spoke to many of the voters there. There's a very large South Asian community there as well. This is an area where Zohran Mamdani did incredibly well in the Democratic primary. And people said to me, being able to save $6 a day by not having to pay the bus will make a real impact on my bottom line. Mamdani's also talked about having universal free childcare for families. He's spoken about city-run grocery stores and also a rent freeze for New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized apartments. All of these policies mobilize New Yorkers. Yeah. And I spoke with some people who said, I understand he's incredibly young. This is going to be his first term in office. He may not be able to get all of this done. But the fact that he's even talking about this in a way that resonates with so many of us, we want to give this young political leader a chance.
Ayanna, turnout yesterday was huge. What key groups and what neighborhoods really delivered for him?
Yeah, so African-American voters delivered for Zohran Mamdani in big numbers. And that's a constituency that it took time for Mamdani to really win and make inroads with. You have to remember, Andrew Cuomo has had a relationship with Black voters in New York City for decades. Yep. Many had not even heard of Zohran Mamdani before he entered the Democratic primary. But again, that message of affordability delivered through these simple, easy to comprehend slogans really resonated with Black voters and with young voters as well. The turnout for Zohran Mamdani in Brooklyn was incredible. Brooklyn is the most populous borough. Brooklyn has the most registered voters. And Brooklyn is also where Zohran Mamdani had the highest margin of victory.
Yeah, the President Trump, has called Mamdani a communist lunatic. Those are his words, and he threatened to withhold federal funding if Mamdani were elected. Mamdani addressed President Trump last night. Let's take a listen.
So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
We can hear crowds love him. As you watch the campaign, watch him talk, what did you learn about Mamdani's ability to communicate, to reach people?
He is a master communicator. We have to remember, before Zohran Mamdani was in politics, he was also a performer, an entertainer. He is the son of a movie director. And so it's clear that Zohran Mamdani knows and understands how to communicate with large groups of people. And his campaign was effective in doing so, and in 2 ways. So we hear a lot of talk about his social media strategy. Yes, he and his team were really innovative in many ways in how they engage voters through Instagram, through TikTok. You know, he didn't just do interviews with traditional journalists. He worked with influencers on social media to try and get his message out. But there was a second, and what I think is probably even more important and more effective arm of his marketing and communication strategy, and that was his prolific ground game. They knocked on 3 million doors in New York City. That's a whole lot of doors.
Yeah,
there were some voters who were saying, okay, enough already. We've heard from you already. You don't have to come back and knock anymore. But that consistent and persistent and sustained outreach to voters, meeting people in the neighborhoods where they are, talking to them in the languages that they speak natively. I think all of that really helped communicate Zohran Mamdani's message.
Ayanna Harry is political journalist for Spectrum News, New York 1. Ayanna, thanks.
Great to be with you.
All right, let's go to the other coast, California, where voters delivered a big win for Democrats and Governor Gavin Newsom. Proposition 50 passed easily and gives Democrats permission to redraw the state's congressional districts in their favor ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Governor Newsom thanked supporters from all over the United States.
We stood tall and we stood firm in response to Donald Trump's recklessness. And tonight, after poking the bear, this bear roared.
Cal Matters reporter Jeannie Kwong is following this story, and she's with us now. Jeannie, nice to speak with you.
Good morning. Nice to be on.
So Prop 50 in California really was a countermeasure to what red states like Texas have been doing, trying to pick up new seats in the midterm elections. And Jeannie, it looks like California Democrats were more than willing to jump into the fray. What did we see last night?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing a pretty easy passage. The AP called it for the Yes on 50 side pretty much right when the polls closed around 8 p.m. last night. And it's looking like the returns so far are showing nearly 64% in favor of the Yes side.
Okay, and when you do the math now, what does it mean for California's congressional delegation? How many more seats could Democrats control?
Yeah, Democrats could win up to 5 of the seats that are currently held by Republicans in the state. Obviously, they already hold the majority of seats here in California, but this was designed to counter the redistricting effort in Texas, which carved out 5 new GOP seats there.
Well, what do the opponents in California of this provision think about that?
Well, certainly Republicans aren't happy, and there are a number of kind of good government advocates that had put in place an independent redistricting commission to draw these lines without party influence back about 10 or 15 years ago here. And so they're also unhappy with the move. But it turns out in the end that, first of all, Democrats overwhelmingly just really wanted to stick it to President Trump. And so, a lot of people were swayed by the Yes campaign.
We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, how is this going to work exactly? You just mentioned an independent redistricting commission that I think was pretty popular in California. Just kind of walk through the process here.
Yeah, this commission is composed of equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats, as well as a number of independent voters who are not registered with any with one of the major parties. And It's just ordinary citizens. They draw the maps after the census every 10 years. They take community input from, all sorts of constituents all over the place. And it is pretty popular. Politicians have tried to take it away before and voters said no. But this time around, the way that they crafted Proposition 50, the way that the Democrats wrote it, it's temporary. So they would use these Democrat-drawn maps for the next 3 congressional elections. And then after the 2030 census, it would revert back to the independent commission.
So this election really boosted the profile of Governor Newsom as someone who is ready and willing to go toe-to-toe with Republicans and the president. What are you hearing in California about how he's positioning himself nationally in this battle over redistricting?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that the governor here has national ambitions, national interests. In recent days, he's finally kind of started admitting to the media that he's considering running in 2028. He said he'd be lying if he said he wasn't. And so obviously this really does boost his profile. We saw over the summer, in just 2 months, in the time that he started pushing this redistricting effort, his approval ratings nationally as a potential 2028 contender doubled. He's really seen around California and the country right now as one of the few Democrats that's willing to try something new and unconventional and sort of fight fire with President Trump, like kind of bend the rules the same way, troll him on social media, just kind of like reach Trump on his own terms. That kind of thing has really boosted his prospects.
So some of the Republican states that are also trying to redistrict here before the midterms, Texas, of course, we mentioned, also Utah, Missouri, Ohio, North Carolina. So, Jeannie, I'm wondering if California does pick up those 5 seats for Democrats, overall, which party has the advantage going into the midterms?
Yeah, well, the conventional wisdom, of course, is that the party that's not in power, that doesn't hold the presidency, does well during midterms because that's when voter dissatisfaction start coming out. And so I think that was already true going in. Of course, this sort of national, like, tit-for-tat redistricting war across the country throws a lot of that into question. So, going into the election yesterday, it was kind of looking like it could all be a wash because, let's say, 5 red seats in Texas, 5 red seats in California, that balances out. And then there's a couple of red states that have already moved to redistrict to squeeze 1 or 2 more GOP seats out there. But now California's also calling on other blue states to do the same. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, margins are razor thin in Congress. Every seat's going to count. Jeannie Kwong, reporter with Cal Matters, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Stay with us. We have a lot more news ahead. It's Here and Now.
Thanks for joining us on WBEZ this morning. Alex Stegman here in for Lisa Labas. Glad we're part of your day today. Well, you hear it from Mary Dixon all the time. The fire hose of news never stops, and yeah, today there's plenty of it. Supreme Court justices right now hearing a case on President Trump's authority to impose sweeping tariffs without the approval of Congress. That story coming up just ahead. And last night, California voters passed Prop 50 to redraw the state's congressional map. California Democrats have called Prop 50 a countermeasure to a Texas redistricting plan that is trying to send more Republicans to Congress in 2026. That story coming up in about 6 minutes.
WBEZ is supported by the Museum of Contemporary Art. Open October 18th through February 22nd at the MCA. Yoko Ono, Music of the Mind, showcases Ono's expansive work in art, music, and film. MCAchicago.org/Yoko Ono.
The Trump administration is firing scores of immigration judges, and an NPR investigation shows one common thread could be a background in immigrant defense. Hear it from the judges themselves on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 3.
Support for WBEZ comes from the Invisible Wounds Foundation, committed to healing service members living with brain injuries. More on their mission by texting DUTY, that's DUTY, to 53555 or on the web at invisiblewounds.org. Sunny today, breezy, high around 59, mostly clear tonight with a low 36. This is WBEZ.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from BetterHelp. committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public.
It's Here and Now. Let's get more on last night's elections and a perspective on the path forward for Democrats. Malcolm Kenyatta, vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. He's also a state representative in Pennsylvania. Malcolm, you're in an airport. I see you just got off a plane, so thanks for making some time for us.
So happy to do it. No rest for the weary.
Yeah, right. Well, we're going to talk about some of these races outside of New York City, but first I do want to start with Zohran Mamdani and his historic win last night. After he won, the center-left group Third Way said his policies are too radical, they don't translate outside of New York City, and as I'm sure you know, the top New York Democrat, Chuck Schumer, got all kinds of heat because he wouldn't endorse Mamdani. Do you think his playbook should be replicated across the country for Democrats?
Well, let me first say, Zohran Mamdani ran an incredible campaign, and the DNC was proud to support him. Chair Martin and myself were, I think, endorsed him minutes after he won the primary, and that's how it should be. Voters in Democratic primaries decide who our nominees are. And I think there was a real through line between Zohran's exciting campaign and also the campaigns that we saw in New Jersey and in Virginia, that every single one of them understood that life is too expensive for the American people. And they talked about how they wanted to make life better for working people and working families. And so this is not about needing to go to the left or go to the right. This is about needing to grow the party. And yesterday showed what happens when we make the type of local investments and have candidates that are speaking to the concerns of their neighbors where they're running for office.
Well, you are going to have to think about messaging because conservative media are really hitting Mamdani's democratic socialist identity. I want to play this tape from Sean Hannity of Fox News as the results were coming in last night.
Now, with concern over potential victory for Zohran, as we affectionately call him, commie Marxist Mamdani in New York City tonight, well, some New York residents, they are threatening to flee.
Today, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said the Democrats have hitched their wagon to the socialist agenda.
That's because the new power center of the left isn't the moderates. It's the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders and the Mamdanis of the party. It's to believe capitalism is evil, who disdain the founding principles of their own country.
So I think you're going to hear a lot more of that. The campaign arm of congressional Republicans has already launched ads in nearly 50 competitive districts trying to link Democrats to Mamdani. I'm wondering if you have an answer to Republicans when they start using labels like that.
So first of all, I reject their framing. Mike Johnson talked about rejecting the founding principles of this country. He is bowing every single day to a guy who wants to be a king, a guy who is operating from an authoritarian, fascistic playbook. So we won't be taking marching orders from Republicans. Americans are very clear on what they want. And we saw it in races in New York, New Jersey. We saw it in Pennsylvania. They don't want a billionaire corrupt class of Donald Trump's friends who rig the economy for themselves at the expense of everyone else. They don't want to live.
So you don't think the Democratic socialist identity will be harmful if it's linked to national candidates or attempted to?
I've watched Mike Johnson and folks like this call every Democrat who's running every name under the sun. What I said before, I think, is worth repeating, that every single candidate on the ballot ran their own race. And we're proud to have a party where folks like Mikey Sherrill can win, where folks like Abigail Spanberger can win, and also where you can have exciting upstart candidates like Zohran Mamdani win. The Democratic Party needs to grow. And so this is not about one wing of the party controlling who the party is. This is about growing the party and welcoming in Americans, Republicans, independents, people who believe Donald Trump's promises that he was going to make life more affordable, who are right now seeing that Donald Trump has made life more expensive. We know that the Republicans are going to lie. What we have to do is tell the truth about what we want to do to make life better for working people and working families. And we saw that all across the country.
I just have a minute left here, but you have some work to do that because a lot of voters don't think too highly of Democrats over the summer. Ratings for the party were at a 30-year low. Last week, a poll from the Washington Post, ABC News, and Ipsos showed 68% of people think Democrats are out of touch. So how do you keep winning when your numbers are like that?
So we just won historic races yesterday. And let me be very clear, you don't beat something with nothing. Democrats had something. We had candidates who represented their neighbors, who were talking about the future of this country and how they're going to make life better and lower costs for Americans. I think that's the playbook moving forward. And you know what? When I see Democrats who are saying, fight harder, do more, we're all singing from the same playbook. I want us to fight harder and do more. And that's why you have a new DNC that's doing just that. And when you look at New Jersey, Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Mississippi, where we broke the supermajority in the Senate there, many of those victories were made possible because of the investments that the DNC is making at the local level, and that local organizing, that year-round organizing, that having candidates who represent their neighbors and their communities who can speak authentically about what's happening where they live, that is a recipe for success. And so people are going to try to make a lot of different, claims about what yesterday means. And what I think the claim people should walk away with is that Democrats are back, and we're back to win, and not to just win so our jersey can win, but we're back to win to lower costs for the American people and make their lives better.
DNC Vice Chair Malcolm Kenyatta, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court today has been hearing one of the most closely watched cases of this term. It's on tariffs and whether President Trump has the authority to do what he has done, put import taxes on a wide range of goods, steel, aluminum, foreign cars. The average American household will pay $1,800 more for goods because of the tariffs, according to the Yale Budget Lab. Mark Joseph Stern joins us to talk about today's case. He covers the courts and the law for Slate. Hey, Mark.
Hi, thanks so much for having me back on.
The president imposed tariffs this year, citing a law from the 1970s that does not contain the word tariff. What argument did the administration bring today?
So the argument is that there's a statute called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's the 1977 statute that allows the president to regulate foreign importation to deal with an unusual and extraordinary threat abroad. Those are direct quotes. And the Solicitor General said, look, we understand this doesn't use the word tariff or tax or duty or anything that suggests the power to tax, but we think that the power to regulate broadly includes the power to impose tariffs. So this is a kind of textual argument that even though the statute doesn't mention taxes, that the court should read into it a broad authority to impose them.
On the other side, small businesses are challenging the tariff authority. And interestingly, several conservative groups are against the president here. What main argument are they making?
So they're arguing that, first of all, the Constitution actually vests the power to impose tariffs and taxes in Congress, not the president. Everyone agrees that Congress can delegate some of that power to the president, but the plaintiffs here say, look, if Congress wants to do that, it has to speak very clearly. It can't smuggle in this delegation through kind of ambiguous or broad language like what we see in the Emergency Powers Act. It needs to be very explicit in handing the president some kind of limited authority to impose unilateral tariffs, and we just don't see that kind of language here.
Yeah, and Mark, to this question, this balance of power question, Justice Neil Gorsuch today focused on that. He asked if, under the administration's argument, Congress could cede to the president a host of responsibilities, declaring war, regulating commerce, even making laws. Let's listen.
Congress, as a practical matter, can't get this power back once it's handed it over to the president. It's a one-way ratchet toward the gradual but continual accretion of power in the executive branch and away from the people's elected representatives.
Mark, did you hear a lot of back and forth today in oral arguments on this balance of powers question, Congress versus the president?
Absolutely. I think that's really central to the case. We heard it from Justice Gorsuch, from the three liberals, and also from Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts. All of those justices seem pretty skeptical of these tariffs, in part because, as I said, it's not really clear that Congress delegated them to the president, and also because this would, in a real way, disrupt the balance of power between Congress and the president. I think Justice Gorsuch is obviously correct that once the president is able to claim this power to unilaterally impose these taxes, is, however he wants for as long as he wants, he's not going to surrender it. And it's going to be nearly impossible for Congress to ever claim that power back. That's just not the system that our Constitution seems to envision.
Yeah. And Mark, we have another cut of tape here from liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor pushing back against the administration's argument that tariffs are not the same as taxes. Let's listen to her.
It's a congressional power, not a presidential power to tax. And you want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are. They're generating money from American citizens, revenue. And you say it's incidental to the regulatory purpose.
Mark, we can only glean so much from what the justices ask, but did any justices seem receptive to the administration's arguments?
So I think at least three were. I think Justices Alito, Kavanaugh, and Thomas all seem to varying degrees receptive to what the administration was arguing. The truth is that President Nixon did impose tariffs under a precursor to the modern statute, and all three of those justices seemed open to the idea that Congress would have intended to carry through that power when it enacted today's statute. But as Justice Barrett showed in a different colloquy, that could cut the other way. It could be that Congress wanted to reduce the president's power to impose tariffs to make sure that never happened again. So I think if I were a betting man, I would bet that the court's going to say these tariffs can't stand.
That's Mark Joseph Stern of Slate. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much.
It's here and now.
Live from NPR News in Boston, I'm Steve Brown. Signs of a potential end to the government shutdown are intensifying with behind-the-scenes talks. They come as the federal closure, now in its 36th day, is the longest shutdown ever, disrupting the lives of millions of Americans. Senators from both parties are quietly trying to negotiate the contours of an emerging deal to reopen the government and resolve the stalemate over health care funds for insurance subsidies. First responders are searching for more victims after at least 9 people died and more than a dozen were injured when a UPS plane crashed while taking off from the airport in Louisville, Kentucky. Video showed flames on the plane's left wing and a trail of smoke. The plane then lifted slightly off the ground before crashing and exploding in a huge fireball. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says he expects the death toll to increase and said 16 families reported loved ones unaccounted for. The airport has since resumed operations. David Beckham has been knighted by King Charles at Windsor Castle. The soccer legend is now Sir David Beckham and calls it his proudest moment. Beckham was honored for his contributions to sport and charity, including his work with UNICEF and efforts to eradicate malaria. You're listening to Here and Now.
Thanks for listening to member-supported public media. You're listening to 91.5 WBEZ. Good morning. I'm Alex Degman. Support comes from St. Ignatius College Prep, a Jesuit Catholic school forming students for lives of faith, love, service, and leadership. Open house November 16th and an entrance exam December 6th. Ignatius.org. Some problems on I-80 westbound and eastbound in Joliet today. Westbound, you've got a crash at Parker Road that's causing stop-and-go traffic from Wolf. Eastbound, there's a cargo spill just past Cherry Hill Road that's causing solid traffic past Larkin. It's taking folks a while to get through there, so if you can get off 80 eastbound at 55 or Hollywood Road, I would absolutely do that today.
WBEZ is supported by the Dover Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Dover, a global manufacturer in the Chicago area, helping kids explore STEM activities with the Dover Tech Play Lab at Cole Children's Museum. DoverCorporation.com/community.
Sunny, breezy today. Temperatures at about 60 right now, but we'll be falling into the mid-50s by the time we go home today. Around 5 o'clock, expect temperatures around 53. This is WBEZ.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And the Mehrotra Institute for Business, Markets, and Society, hosting the Is Business Broken podcast, featuring conversations with academics, industry leaders, and politicians. More at ibms.bu.edu.
It's here and now. The government shutdown is officially the longest in U.S. history. And we've been reporting on how it's affecting about 900,000 federal employees furloughed or working without pay, 42,000 laid off, and families struggling without Head Start programs or SNAP, supplemental food benefits. Today we have an update and a glimmer of optimism because yesterday we spoke with Royal Palmer, owner of the Driftless Market and Deli in Platteville, Wisconsin, and we have a reason to bring him back today. Royal, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be back again already, so soon.
I know, and when we spoke with you, 24 hours ago, you were letting your customers who rely on SNAP to open up lines of credit at the store. You'd already given away nearly $3,000 worth of groceries. Your own bank account was in the red. What's happened since?
Well, yesterday after the show aired, my store phone just started ringing, and my employee picked it up, and she said, "Oh my gosh, someone wants to donate to us." And so someone had called from Massachusetts, and then as soon as we hung up the phone with her, someone called from Florida. I actually had to leave because I had to go to a class on campus. But between the hour and a half that I was gone, we'd received almost, I think, $700 in donations.
Wow.
And then we got multiple email requests to figure out how to donate.
Yeah. Did people tell you why? What motivated them to help you out?
Yes. One person was like, "I was so moved by your story. My grandpa was a small grocery store owner, and it reminded me of going there when I was a little girl and making sure that everyone went in was taken care of. It was my grandpa's number one thing." And another person said that they were in tears and had to pull over the car. So it was really a special moment, power of goodness, and it was almost embarrassing, but in a good way.
You mentioned the power of goodness. I want to ask you about that because we've been talking with people across the country who've told us about the ways that members of a community have stepped up to help people in this past month or so, either by donating to food banks or looking for extra money to keep Head Start programs open in Florida. I'm curious what your thoughts are about that. People stepping in, doing the job of the government when it breaks down.
I think it's this really magical thing that happens. I don't love the government getting into all of my affairs anyway, but, I am a huge proponent for social aid. But at the same time, I think when the government fails us, it forces us as a nation to go back to our roots. And when we were really trying to build a better free nation where we could all have opportunity, I have to eat, you have to eat. How are we going to figure this out as a community? Because no one deserves to starve.
Yesterday, you told us that things were so bad financially that you'd had tough conversations with your family and your business partners about closing. I'm wondering if these donations change that calculation at all?
They have influenced the conversation for sure. Part of what also happened yesterday was with the momentum and the humility that I got from all of those donations, it really kind of put me in this mindset of maybe it's time that we really do just need to ask for help in a more substantial way. And, I think these donations have brought to light just how close we are to closing, because without the donations, we probably would have been closing soon.
Royal Palmer owns the Driftless Market and Deli in Platteville, Wisconsin. Royal, thank you so much for talking with us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
It's here and now.
.60 degrees, a partly cloudy sky at 11:38. Thanks for listening to WBEZ on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Alex Degman in for Lisa Labus. Support for WBEZ comes from Progressive Insurance. Progressive offers insurance for home, auto, boat, and more. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
WBEZ is supported by Symphony Center. Pianist Hayato Sumino makes his Symphony Center debut with works by Chopin, Bach, and Ravel on November 16th. More at cso.org/piano.
Life in America was expensive before the shutdown added new stresses. What does the economy look like from where you're sitting? Your stories next time on 1A.
Today at noon on WBEZ.
Well, traffic on 80 eastbound in Joliet is getting worse. You've got a solid jam extending from Larkin east past Cherry Hill Road due to a crash. Cargo's been spilled on the interstate. It's taking some folks more than an hour to get through the area. Westbound, you're also seeing some traffic delays, though not as bad. Westbound, you've got a crash at Parker Road. Weather today looks pretty good. Sunny, breezy a little bit though. We'll see daytime highs right around 60, which is where we are, but we're expecting temperatures to start falling here in a couple of hours. By the time the evening rush gets underway for a lot of us, it'll be down in the low 50s. Mostly clear tonight with a low around 36, and then tomorrow we'll see plenty of clouds. Maybe a couple of peaks of sunshine with a high around 56. Right now under a partly cloudy sky, it's 60 degrees. This is WBEZ.
Funding for Here and Now comes from Loomis Sayles, committed to meeting the investment goals of institutional and individual investors across the globe. Combining in-house research and risk management, they create tailored investment strategies for every client. Learn more at LoomisSayles.com. And CitySpace Productions, WBUR's creative studio for custom podcasts that tell a brand's story, to ignite engagement, reach new audiences, or enhance customer connections. WBUR.org/creative studio.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Peter O'Dowd in Phoenix.
I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C. This is Here and Now. Not many chefs in America are household names. One is Tom Colicchio. If you watch Top Chef, he's been head judge and executive producer for years.
Joe's dish is just amazing. The broth is really delicious. It's so flavorful. It's just perfect.
But well before that, Tom Colicchio was a chef in New York, making a name for himself at standout restaurants like the Quilted Giraffe and Gotham Bar and Grill, before he co-founded the Gramercy Tavern and then opened Craft in 2001. Well, 25 years ago, he published Think Like a Chef. It's part cookbook, part manual for cooks in the culinary world and at home that breaks down a chef's creative process. And now a 25th anniversary edition is just out, and Tom Colicchio joins us to talk about it. Tom, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
You know, a lot has happened in 25 years in your own life and career in the restaurant and cooking world. In the author's note at the top, you write that the philosophy that runs through all my restaurants, which is the philosophy that runs through this book, has never changed. Lay out what that philosophy is.
Yeah, so the idea that, you buy the best ingredients you can, you treat them simply. I still think that cooking, doesn't need to be complicated.
And your cookbook, Think Like a Chef, the first few chapters are about what you describe as fundamentals. You kind of start with that and you go from there, and so much of our lives, you have to start there. Yeah?
Sure. I mean, any discipline, if you're a musician, you can go out and learn 3 chords, and if you have a decent voice, you may sound good around a campfire. It doesn't make you a musician. Right? You need to understand theory. You need to understand how chords are composed. You need to understand how to play modes and scales, and that all takes time. Same thing with cooking. There's some basic building blocks, and I think that too many people focus on the recipe as a means to an end as opposed to the techniques. And I think once you understand that, you can look at a recipe and go, okay, I know they want me to braise this lamb shoulder, and I see how I'm getting the flavor in there. And then from there, you can make it your own. You don't have to go and look at a recipe. And for me, I really struggled with, trying to read through a recipe. And then it wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 or so, my dad brought home a bunch of cookbooks from where he worked, his library where he worked. And one of them was Jacques Pepin's La Technique, which was a book that focused more on techniques, not on recipes. Now, I had no idea what this book was doing in the county jail library. And my dad he was not an inmate.
That's a whole separate question here, right?
He was a corrections officer, and he brought this book home. And it just completely changed everything for me.
And there's a lot in your book about technique. One of them that I want to ask you about, to kind of explain a little, is the fundamental technique of roasting. What is roasting? And as an example, how do you apply it to your recipe for pan-roasted striped bass?
So roasting is referred to as a dry method of cooking, like where braising is a combination of dry and wet. You can do one of two things. If it's a large, bird like a turkey, it can go directly in the oven. Right? Yeah. If it's a striped bass, which is, pretty meaty fish, that would be pan roasted, where a little bit of oil in a pan, skin side down. You make sure the fish is very dry before it goes in. You season it just before you put it in the pan. And once it goes in, leave it alone. don't shake the pan back and forth, just let it go. And medium heat, when it's ready to turn, it'll release itself. And then you add some whole butter and some herbs and baste it. And that's a method of pan roasting that works for chicken breast. It could work for a pork chop, a piece of fish, anything.
All right, let's talk veggies. You have a whole section in the middle of your cookbook where you describe veggies as the building blocks that spark our imagination and let us fly. So the building blocks, right? Not this side thing.
Right.
And one
right.
veggie you use an example of what you're talking about is mushrooms. So talk about that, how you pan roast mushrooms, but how you think about mushrooms as a starting point.
Chefs think about, how to build a dish. So if you look at vegetables now, there's unlimited amounts of flavor combinations you can come up with because there's so many varieties and they are different flavors. What I wanted to do was illustrate this point by using mushrooms. I have two different examples that I use. One chapter is studies, which is starting with the mushroom, and then by pairing it and cooking it and approaching it very differently, you come up with different dishes. And so by doing something like a mushroom bolognese and using that with polenta, you come up with a dish. By pan roasting wild mushrooms or cultivated mushrooms and then adding scallops to the pan, maybe some asparagus and browning it all together, that's another dish. And so just by treating the one ingredient separately and combining it with different ingredients and different herbs, you come up with different flavor combinations or different dishes. Now, then the other chapter was trilogies, where I take 3 ingredients, and by simply treating them all differently, you come up with completely different dishes. And all this was just in not so much to come up with recipes, but just to stress the idea of how at least this chef thinks about building dishes and building flavors and being creative.
Yeah. So many of us now think so much more about food and how to be creative about it in this generation. And you kind of make a nod to this in your cookbook. First came out 25 years ago. A lot has changed about food. A lot has changed about, what's available in markets and in supermarkets. But a lot has changed on television too. So I want to ask you about that. The TV show Top Chef has been around more than 2 decades. You have been a head judge since the show began, highlighting these incredible talents. How do you explain this TV phenomenon, why we all love it so much and what it tells us about cooking today?
Well, I think so many people are call them hobbyist cooks. They start out like most hobbies. You start out by buying some cookbooks, buying some magazines, eventually, fancy gadgets and knives, and then you get your kitchen remodeled. And it's become really a real serious hobby for so many people. And so then I think people advance from there and they want to, they go to the restaurants because they like restaurants and food, and then they want to know more about the chefs. And then with the advent of Food Network, and people really got an idea of the personalities. And then with Top Chef, you really got to see, I think, again, it's about process. It's about giving someone a set of rules to cook by, saying, here's your time limit, and seeing that happen all in real time, somewhat suspended because of TV, but if we say you have an hour to cook, you have an hour to cook. And so seeing that process from start to finish, I think that people kind of latch onto that because they can pick up bits of technique and see how you can approach different things and see how different chefs approach different ideas. But then the one problem we had or that we thought we would have had was that you can't taste the food. And so we knew from day one that the only way for the viewer to understand it was for us to have a real vibrant conversation about that dish and be very descriptive about that dish and give really honest feedback. It wasn't about, zingers and one-liners and making feel, grabbing someone by the face and yelling at them. It was about just giving them really good, honest feedback. And I think that's why it worked.
Yeah. And here we are, right? More than 2 decades on. Tom, finally, question about restaurants. You write about how so many did not make it through the pandemic. Today, we know the economy is challenged, rents are up, ingredient prices are up. How challenging is it right now?
Yeah, you missed one other thing. Labor's up as well. Pre-pandemic, cooks were starting, at like $18 an hour. Post-pandemic, $24, $25 an hour.
Really?
Rents are up. Food prices are through the roof, especially beef right now. It's challenging. I mean, I just had probably my worst year ever at craft. So I'm not immune to it either. The hardest thing right now in New York is labor. And I think part of that is rents are so high that young people can't afford to live here anymore. We're finding that a lot of people are, they come here maybe for 1 or 2 years, get some experience, and then they go back home. On the plus side is you have a lot of really good chefs that have great training that are going into tertiary cities now and opening up great restaurants. So there's good food all across America. And I think that the economy is tricky right now because for some it's great. For most it's not. And when everything is more expensive, the high-end restaurants, there's a little more elasticity in pricing because their clientele can pay for it. So my concern is the neighborhood restaurants. They're going to have a hard time because they can't raise prices. It's going to be a tough couple of years.
Tough moment. We've been talking to Tom Colicchio, 8-time James Beard Award-winning chef and the owner of Craft Hospitality. He's a longtime head judge and executive producer of Top Chef on Bravo, and he's the author of the book Think Like a Chef, and the 25th anniversary edition just came out. Tom, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're listening to Hear It Now.
60 degrees at 11:50. You're listening to WBEZ. A new update for you. Eastbound 80 is now closed between Briggs and Route 30 due to a crash and a cargo spill, and they're cleaning up a fuel spill as well. Traffic starts backing up before Larkin. Heading eastbound, you will need to exit at either 55 or Hollywood Road.
The following is a public service announcement provided by WBEZ. Lincoln Park Art Night is a celebration of art on Chicago's North Side. 5 different galleries will open their doors Thursday evening, November 6th, and a free shuttle will take guests to the galleries throughout the neighborhood. More information at madronagallery.com/events. This is WBEZ. WBEZ is supported by 3 Arts, celebrating 63 Chicago artists at their 2025 award celebration on November 10th at the Harris Theater, featuring performances by the Chicago Immigrant Orchestra and more. Details at 3arts.org.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and your NPR station, and from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And the Museum of Science Boston, where visitors can experience live presentations with indoor lightning storms, animals, robotics, and hands-on design challenges. Learn more at mos.org.
It's Here and Now. For a few weeks now, curious residents and visitors in Washington, D.C. have been checking out the White House, trying to get a glimpse of the East Wing's demolition and construction of a new ballroom that President Trump has in mind. NPR's Frank Langford also went over to look and chat with others stopping by, and he joins us. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Scott. Great to be here.
So what have you heard from these people watching the demolition?
Yeah, Scott, the majority of the people I've talked to, they don't like what's happening. One of the guys that I talked to who's a detractor, his name's William Johnson. He was wearing a Washington Commanders sweatshirt. He's 64 years old, and he came up from South Central Virginia.
It was just too much to stand, so I just jumped in the car and drove up here today. I said, let me get here before it gets dark so I can see for myself.
What was William Johnson able to actually see?
Scott, almost nothing. I don't know if you've been over there, but there are so many fences that occasionally you could kind of see like heavy equipment, but otherwise the walls are basically blocking any view of the site.
Yeah. So what was Johnson's problem here?
Well, a lot of what you hear from people there, and that is no consultation with historical preservationists and no public process to make such a dramatic change.
If you connect the dots, there's a lot of hubris. You know, forget about what the taxpayers, forget about what our representatives want. The administration does what they feel, so there's no accountability. And that's the kind of thing that kind of blew my mind, is that all the guardrails are down.
Now, as a lot of people may remember, back in July, President Trump said construction of the ballroom would have no impact on the East Wing.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it.
But last month, he ordered the East Wing leveled.
You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, That's music to my ears. I love that sound.
Now, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she says architects told the president that in order to build a 90,000 square foot ballroom, the entire East Wing would have to go. Then just last week, you probably remember this, the president fired the members of the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts. This is the independent federal agency that advises the president on new building projects, things like White House renovations. Now, William Johnson, he spent more than 2 decades in the Air Force. He's now retired, and he sees this whole episode as a microcosm for the way Trump approaches governing.
I spent a lot of time serving. I follow orders. I did what I was supposed to do, and I believe in the system.
Do you think President Trump believes in the system?
Not like I do.
Well, Frank, we have heard the bulldozer metaphor from many describing the place you were looking at. Do you have any sense as to whether Mr. Johnson, who you talked to, has a representative view of all this?
I think he is representative. There were a couple of national polls in the last 2 weeks, and more than half the people polled opposed the demolition and the ballroom.
You know, Frank, here's the thing. Like, we go out into a place like Washington, D.C., sometimes we're surprised. We don't know what to expect from the people we talk to. Just curious, did you talk to many who support what the president's doing here with this demolition?
I did. I talked to a guy named Stephen Caton. He's 34, works for a clean energy company in California. He's really enthusiastic about the new construction.
I think it's going to be great. When you smash something down, everybody screams and says, oh, don't break that thing down. But then I'll bet when this ballroom's done, everyone's going to love it.
Why do you think so?
I heard that it was going to be like hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's so much money that I'm sure it's going to be spectacular. It almost has to be, given that price tag.
Now, we should note, Frank, right, the price tag has been going up. Initially, the president said $200 million. Now it's $300 million, yeah?
Yeah, and Trump says that he and some of his supporters are going to foot the bill among the companies Amazon, Google, and Lockheed Martin.
And the footprint of this project, it's gigantic.
It is. And what Trump says is he needs a much bigger venue to accommodate large events honoring foreign leaders.
Now, Frank, the president also says previous presidents have made changes to the White House over the years, going back a couple hundred years. What did the visitors you talked to make of that historical argument?
I think a lot of them agree, but only up to a point. Here's Claudia Wilson, retired public school teacher from Pennsylvania.
I came across an article that talked about all the things that other presidents have done. This is not unusual, but it's the magnitude.
And this is the key objection that you hear and you're referencing, and that is, yes, White House was built to human scale for a country that had fought off the British monarchy, and as designed, the ballroom is just going to dwarf that main White House building. I also met a guy named Rick Savoya. He's from Massachusetts. He remembers visiting the East Wing a few years ago.
It was stately. It had a lot of great architecture. It was representative of our country. And I feel like now what's being done to it, it's trying to be made representative of some other country.
Which country would that be?
At the moment, with all the gold in the White House, I'm going to say Versailles in France.
Palace at Versailles. I've been there. Grand Palace, Frank.
Yeah, and a very different image from a place that, of course, we've always known as the People's House.
Yeah. NPR's Frank Langfitt. Frank, thank you.
Happy to do it, Scott.
Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR.